With over 1,100 corporate and professional investors and more than 900,000 traders globally, VALR is one of the largest crypto exchanges by trade volume in Africa.
That compliance and doing things properly is important. Our exchange has to be absolutely correct down to the cent at all times. And in fact, if it's not, then the exchange stops.
I'm sitting with Farzam Ehsani, who is the co-founder and CEO of VALR, one of the biggest cryptocurrency exchange in Africa. Personally, one of my favorite crypto exchanges. I'm South African, so I really do enjoy the product that you guys have made.
Thank you.
Could you maybe start with just telling us a bit about your entry into the crypto space? I know you did start from a Web 2 normal background, and kind of how that has transitioned the way that you run VALR versus, let's say, some of the crypto exchanges. I don't want to say names, but not had a traditional Web 2 background. Things have kind of gone wrong without having proper procedures in place.
I started in the consulting world, actually, and then in the banking world, and was working at FNB in the first RAN group and RMB. I think one of the big things about kind of coming from that world is understanding that compliance and doing things properly is important. And also, at VALR, we're obviously running an exchange that deals with people's money. So, it's not a photo app where if you upload the photo and it doesn't go through, this is fine. Our exchange has to be absolutely correct down to the cent at all times. And in fact, if it's not, then the exchange stops. So I think a lot of people in the crypto space, particularly in the exchange space, and we've seen obviously in 2022 a whole bunch of players that were caught not doing the right things, haven't taken that responsibility as seriously as they should. And I think it really is a responsibility because you're dealing with real money. Crypto assets are not just a plaything anymore. We're talking about trillions of US dollars in market cap now. So I think that background of and also I'm a little bit older than your average.
You're not 30?
Well, I'm 26, and so just kind of having a little bit of experience of saying, listen, you have to build for the long term, and trying to take shortcuts is actually just immoral and wrong. And actually in the long run doesn't serve you or anybody else. So just building slowly and properly, particularly because it's financial service, is critically important.
I like that. Build slow and properly, don't try and rush anything. I think there's always this contrast of trying to stay innovative and competitive, and then so trying not to fall behind, and then staying ahead of the regulatory side and doing things properly. How do you how do you handle that approach of trying to be as competitive and as fast moving as possible and trying to keep up with the regulations, which are irritatingly slow, I can imagine?
So I think, first of all, when I say build slowly, I'm talking about, there's this theme within tech, just to build as quickly as you can, just ship whatever you have as quickly as you can. And of course we want to build quickly. But when I say build slow, I'm talking about relative to that kind of just go and break anything and see what happens. So I'm saying do what you need to do, but as quickly as possible, which ends up being much slower than you would actually hope for, right? And so what I mean by that is, and I'll be very open, like I can remember with FTX, they used to be deploying things very, very quickly. And I used to look at this as an exchange CEO. I said, but this thing just came out yesterday and they've already launched a product right now. How could they get all that through? Because we have testing cycles, it has to go into development, staging, production, and each stage is testing. And then only to really realize maybe a lot of that was smoke and mirrors, right? And so I think we do need to build as quickly as possible, of course, otherwise you can't stay competitive, to your point. But it's just making sure that responsibility that's required to make sure you do it properly takes a little bit longer than you expect. When you're not worried, right? Or you don't care, so which we care a lot. So I think that's the one thing when it comes to regulation. Regulations are slow, but they're also changing quickly, and so we've had to be very adaptable to that. There's a whole bunch of regulations now coming, particularly in South Africa, with travel rule that's on the horizon, and things like KYC we've been doing from the beginning. So I think the trick is to try to stay as nimble as possible, but to build with integrity as quickly as possible. But it's slower when it comes to finance.
So you guys are like the biggest in Africa at the moment. What jurisdictions are you looking to get into? Because I know you said you live in the US part-time. Is that like in the roadmap? Where do you guys want to be?
No. So we are probably about 75% of our customer base right now is in South Africa. The rest, 25%, is around the world. We have many customers in East Asia, many customers in Europe, many customers in South America, particularly Brazil. We are out of the United States. So I spent some time there for personal reasons because my wife wanted to be there and some family members, we wanted to be closer to family. But we are not in the United States because of regulation. Also, if you look at the United States, pretty much all the big exchanges and the big players are in a lawsuit with the regulators at the moment.
It's kind of like a rite of passage at this point.
It seems like that, which is unfortunate.
Kind of, if you don't have it, it's like, are you even a crypto player in the space?
Which is unfortunate because I think there's a lot to be done, and I think there are many people that are trying to do things properly and well, including some of the people that are in lawsuits with the regulators right now in the United States. So we're not in the United States at all right now. We started in South Africa. We actually moved into other African countries like Zambia. We actually opened bank accounts and we were operating locally. But it got very difficult to operate there, and actually we couldn't sustain our banking partners there. We couldn't keep a bank account open. And the main reason is that when you have a lot of customers, you're going to have some customers that unfortunately have fraudulent flows. And so we have a fraud department to stop that, to report it, etc. So some countries don't understand how that works, and they don't understand that VALR is a custodian, and that when the funds come into a particular account, our account that's a custodial account, they're not our funds, it's our customers' funds.
Yeah.
So we need to always work in jurisdictions where we're very close to the banks, we're very close to the regulators, we have very strong partnerships with them so that we can, through compliance and fraud, make sure that the platform is seeing flows that it should be seeing and stopping flows that it shouldn't be seeing.
Yeah.
But that requires quite a lot of maturity of the banking system and the regulators. So it's very difficult for crypto exchanges to work in many African countries right now, and also in many African countries it's not allowed. And we don't go anywhere where we're not welcome. We're very clear with our banking partners, with our regulators, what we do, who we are. We use the word crypto. In fact, when I was talking to one of our banks, they said, no, don't use the C word over here.
Yeah.
And we said, this is what we do.
We're a crypto exchange.
So, so I mean, so the reason I say all of that is that right now we've taken a pivot, not to go country by country in Africa, but actually we've got dollar on-ramps, euro on-ramps, ZAR on-ramps, and we're actually bringing the world to VALR now.
Yeah.
So a lot of our customers are coming from, as I said, East Asia and Europe, and some still obviously from Africa, but we are now a global exchange rather than just an African exchange.
So I did my articles in London. I'm a chartered accountant, and I know how annoying the regulation stuff. So we did a few customer assets. There were so many checklists that you had to do as an entity.
Yes.
How do you kind of split your time between just trying to figure out that regulation side and trying to make the best competitive product for your customers?
I think the regulations, first of all, in South Africa have become a little bit more clear. So there's much more clarity in the SA side. And I think in most places, regulations should be in line with what you should be doing in any case, right? The regulators ultimately, from a societal perspective, regulators should be doing things on behalf of the people to keep the public protected and safe. And so we're always doing that, whether there's regulations or not. From day one, we were KYCing people because we believed that that was the way that the world was going to be going. So that was not required of us at the beginning, but we did that. And so it's always just anticipating what needs to be done. Like a lot of people in the crypto space kind of skate very close to this line of what's illegal and what's legal so that they can get things out and kind of just cut corners. We don't do that at all.
Yeah.
In fact, regulation for us is there, but we're so far in because we know what we should be doing. Yeah. And then also when there are particular regulations that don't make such sense, then we're very vocal about that with the regulators. We obviously abide by those regulations because that's the law and we abide by the law. But I think it's not too complex. When you're trying to do the right thing, and a lot of the regulatory frameworks that are coming out right now in many parts of the world do make sense, then it's not too complicated, to be honest.
Yeah, I think you have to be wanting to do the right thing because you know when you're making a decision, whether regulations are there or not, you know if this is not right or right. Like you kind of know deep down. That's a good point. What is the biggest hurdle that you guys have now in terms of expanding for VALR?
The biggest thing for us is that we are a marketplace. And for a marketplace, you need a lot of participants. And so we've been able to do that extremely well within South Africa, where we've got the deepest markets, the most volume. We're the dominant player by volume by far in South Africa. And so the biggest challenge right now is, despite the fact that we have a world-class technology, world-class API, world-class systems, UI, app, etc., is actually ensuring that we bring the deep liquidity to markets that are global. And so the way we're doing that right now, for example, we recently launched perpetual futures. The way we do that is through shared value. And so right now we are making a lot of our money from spot and spot margin. And so we've decided over the next year, we're actually giving all the fees that are coming through on the perpetuals back to our big traders. And so it's an incentivization plan to get them to come on to say, listen, this is our value, but you're helping us to build this deep liquid markets. So here we're incentivizing you. So you're going to get back all those fees that you're paying and more, because obviously the largest traders.
The network effect, yeah, and it grows.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think those are the biggest things, and that's also always the most difficult thing at the beginning of VALR, is to get those initial traders to come on. And the way we did that again is through shared value. We offered negative maker fees. We were one of the first, or maybe the first, in the spot markets in crypto in the world. Actually, crypto and traditional markets, where if you brought liquidity to our markets, we would pay you a fee from the taker side as well. So, and maybe just a second so that people understand what I mean by that. Every trade has a buyer and a seller.
Yeah.
And every trade has a maker and a taker. So when we had negative fees, some people would look at us and say, but how long is that sustainable? And what they didn't understand is that we had, at the time, it was 20 basis points taker and negative 10 basis points maker. And so we only pay out the 10 when we receive the 20. Yeah. So it's an extremely sustainable model.
Yeah,
so the same thing over here right now, as we're earning more fees from the perpetual markets, we're paying all that back to our traders. And it's actually, I believe it's the largest crypto price pool in the world of any centralized exchange. Actually, centralized or decentralized.
I think kind of for like a reference point, it's kind of like for helping you build the ecosystem, and VALR, you're giving them value back. Absolutely. In the same way that I've got a big dislike towards Facebook, Instagram, because there's so many people who bring people into the platform and they pay out so little, like less than 1% to the people who are growing the platform. They're keeping all those profits to themselves.
Absolutely.
So what you guys are doing is basically, we're making these fees, we're going to give it back to you because you're helping grow this ecosystem.
Absolutely.
That's a beautiful thing to see.
It's kind of at the core of what we do is just shared value. If we do well, we want our customers to do well as well.
So you guys are a centralized exchange.
Yep.
So I do have to ask.
Go for it.
The FTX saga.
Yeah.
While I see it as a good thing in the fact that something bad always has to happen with new technology for regulation to step in and say, okay, we need to improve this, we need this to get better. How have you guys, was there any backlash for you as a centralized exchange? Were there any more checks that you had to do, or were you doing like proof of reserves before already?
No, so nothing changed with how we're operating, because we've always operated well before. We continue to operate well right now. So literally nothing changed at all. What did change was that customers coming to ask us to say, oh, how do we know that you're not like FTX, and how do we know that our money is safe, etc. So we had to have a lot of those conversations, basically share what our financial situation was with them, explain to them how we operate, etc. For them really to get to know us. Now you brought up proof of reserves. Proof of reserves is something that gained a lot of traction at that time, and it still is there. But I think it's really, really important for the world to know, and I'm very vocal about this, is that if you're going to have someone that's going to lie to you about what they're doing with your funds, it's very, very easy to lie to you about the proof of reserves, right? And people can say, oh, you get an auditor, etc. I can tell you, as someone that runs an exchange, if you want to lie to someone, lie to an auditor, you can bamboozle
get an audit.
them, right?
Yeah, no, I get
you can bamboozle them,
yeah.
Right? So all I'm saying is that ultimately, you need to know who the operators are of the counterparties that you're dealing with, and make sure that you trust them. It really does come down to trust. So I think we are going to be moving in the direction of proof of reserves in any case, because that seems to be where the industry is going, and it's good to also know from an asset side where the assets are. But with the proof of reserves, you need to know where the assets are, and then you also need to know what the client funds on your own ledger are.
Yeah.
And the only people that can see that, that's not on any public blockchain, that's on our own servers. And so again, we don't care, because all of that is above board for us. But if someone is not doing things properly, then they can jimmy the numbers and tell the world, look at my proof of reserve. So if you have people that do have proof of reserves, it doesn't mean that your money is necessarily safe. You still need to do your homework to get to know them, to see if you can trust them. And ultimately, the beautiful thing about crypto is if you don't trust, you withdraw and hold the crypto yourself.
Yeah.
So at the time, people were saying, hey, you know, is our money safe, etc. And I said, really, the only way for you to tell if your money's safe is withdraw your funds. And at VALR, if everybody withdraws their funds right now or at the same time, everybody will get their funds because we're 100% reserved, one-to-one backed. So we're not a bank. There's no fractional reserve, there's no lending, there's no touching client funds, etc. So that's the message to everybody else. If you're ever concerned, withdraw your funds. That's the only way to make sure that your funds are actually available.
I think a big part in that is just education of kind of how exchanges work, education about what proof of reserves is, and then kind of crypto in general. Emerging markets, I usually see, like, if they've ever suffered through hyperinflation, they understand the value of Bitcoin, they understand more the value of crypto, that you can't rely on fiat currency versus Western countries where the capital assets are usually safe, like somehow backed by the government or something. For the users that you have in South Africa, let's say for instance, how do you go about educating them about what VALR is and crypto in general?
Yeah. So I think we do a lot of interviews like this. Try to get the word out, let people ask questions. Actually, a lot of interviewers come to me and say, you know, what can I not ask you about? And I would say, ask me about anything. There's nothing to hide. In fact, if anybody's telling you not to ask about X, Y, and Z, there's a problem there. So we do a lot of these conversations. We do a lot of AMAs. We do, our marketing team spends a lot of time trying to educate people. But at the same time, while we try to educate, our mandate really is to operate an exchange that's really well functioning. So there's a lot of other places, you know, that their mandates are to educate. And so we obviously need to do some education, but we're not an educational company. We're an exchange, we're a technology company where we deal and work on a matching engine, reducing latency. So making sure that assets are secure. That's where really our focus is. And so I think also ultimately it's up to individuals to try to educate themselves. There's a lot of information out there, but we do our very best. You can go to support.valr.com. We've got a lot of articles there. You can write into our support desk with any questions that you have. Our support team is going to support you and help you. So we do try to do what we can. But we're not an educational company. We're a crypto exchange.
No, I get that. Everyone should take it upon themselves, and there's so much content out there to learn that they should do it. What for VALR is the next, let's say, year, 2 years in crypto going to look like? Especially with the US elections coming up, which you know, you're South African or more Africa-based, but that impacts crypto across more broadly speaking.
Everything across the world.
I think there's so much capital waiting on the sidelines just to wait to see. How do you see a Trump versus Kamala administration affecting the crypto markets?
So when you talk to all the traders, everybody's kind of waiting for the election to come and go. And obviously there is a discourse that says that Trump is more pro-crypto at the moment and Harris is, I suppose, more muted because initially the Biden administration with the SEC under this administration has been quite anti-crypto, obviously, as you know. But more recently, the Harris campaign has been talking more about what they want to do within crypto, although not nearly as much as Trump. Now, my view is, and also at VALR, we stay clear. We don't pick sides. We're not into politics. In fact, our motto is, you know, building a financial system that recognizes the oneness of humanity, regardless of your race, your political party, etc. So I think actually, I don't believe too much will change from whoever gets into office. I do think that the markets are waiting for some type of determination, obviously, so that things can continue. But I think, you know, this is a small blip, you know, this particular event, when I say in the grand scheme of things. This technology is so strong, it has so much to offer humanity, and it will have a few ebbs and flows, but we're heading in a, you know, direction that's very powerful to serve the world. So we don't spend too much time thinking about that or worried about that. I don't think any of those administrations is going to crush crypto. I actually don't even think, like, if Trump gets elected, I don't think there's going to be a massive adoption of crypto either. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done from the crypto industry, from the infrastructures to build, for people to trust once again the players that are in this industry. I think concomitantly, I think there will be some crises within the traditional financial space. So I think the world is such a complex place. So this is one thing that will happen. As I said, I don't think that the impact will be as much as people think it is, but people are waiting on the sidelines, and I think once it's done, I think we'll see more activity.
Yeah, I think a lot of so what I worry about is that everyone's talking about crypto now, of the politicians, and I worry that they're just trying to get the voters to vote for them, as opposed to even them caring about the crypto thing. That when it's done, they're like, okay, it can stay for another 4 years. Like Trump, for instance, he was in power for 4 years. What did he actually do to further crypto? Not a lot, right?
In fact, he was anti-crypto.
Yeah. So like it could all just be a play for votes, but hopefully then the voters will keep them accountable to it afterwards.
Well, that's exactly correct. So I think politics has become a very dirty game across the world. And unfortunately, it's very difficult to distinguish truth from falsehood. And so it's very difficult to know, these words, are they going to translate into actions, to your point, what actions will they be? And at that time, are there going to be other interests that are going to try to trump these interests, no pun intended? So, as I said, we keep our heads down, we keep building, we try to do the right thing always, and we really have a firm belief that this technology and this asset class is going to offer so much to the world, and it will be so powerful that no political party or individual candidate would be able to stop it. And I think that's the story of humanity. When we progress, vested interests try to get in the way, but ultimately, progress prevails.
Yeah, progress always prevails. So you've been, you founded VALR 2018?
2018.
Before that, you also had you're doing crypto knowledge, blockchain knowledge. So you've kind of been learning about the space for a very long time and seeing the ebbs and flows and the ups and the downs. Now we're getting into a stage where it's more, at least the way I see it, there's more institutional interest coming into it. And people are not just listening to projects make promises anymore. They want to start seeing results.
100%.
How do you see this year playing out in 2025 in terms of true world value being created as opposed to speculation and gambling?
So I think whenever you have a new technology, there's always speculation. One could argue like the venture capital space, that's what they do. They speculate on new technologies, new companies, and in some sense they're making a bet to see what will come out. It's not obviously a gambling bet like you go to the casinos. Obviously you apply your mind and you look at where the world is going and you try to identify those trends and position yourself accordingly. But I think that ultimately we have such a proliferation of these projects, which is wonderful at the moment. But most of these projects are not going to offer value for the world. And a lot of them, in my view, are going to go to zero, right? When that happens, I don't know. A lot of them have already gone to zero, right? But
less up, down.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But in the same way that during the dot-com bubble boom and bust, we had many internet companies that kind of promised the world and then crashed. Today, 25 years later, say, the most valuable assets in the world are assets that came out of that boom, right? Even though most crashed. And I think we'll see the same thing where we'll see a few crypto assets that are worth a tremendous amount and that have kind of garnered a huge network effect, that they're good technologically speaking. But I think we'll see a lot of the experimentation kind of fall to the wayside. And I don't think that's a good or a bad thing. That's just the way life is. That's kind of evolution. Cambrian explosion and experimentation and the survival of the fittest, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I think we'll see some failures and some successes this coming year as well as usual. And that's why I also say, even though I'm a crypto founder, right now crypto is not for every single person in the world. Right? Yeah. And it's still very volatile. And if you're living from hand to mouth, you're trying to save some money to pay your rent next month. I advise people, I'm not allowed to give financial advice, but my thoughts are that you need to ensure that you can meet your obligations. And if you put it into crypto, it's very volatile. You might do very well, you might do very, very badly, but it's not worth that risk. Just, make sure you're saving in the currency in which you owe so that you can meet those.
I think a lot of countries that are in, like Argentina, for instance, high inflation environments, they just more, instead of Bitcoin, Ethereum, or anything like that, they just want USDC or a stable coin so that they can kind of preserve their wealth.
We're seeing that in Africa as well, mainly because there's been a big devaluation of the ZAR in the last few years, as you know. big devaluation of Naira, big devaluation of many of the local African currencies, the Kwacha, etc. And I think many people across the African continent are buying stable coins because they want to hedge themselves against the devaluation of their local currency. So yeah, definitely.
From that, let's take it away from just purely crypto. Let's just talk about the de-dollarization in one aspect from China, Japan, more Eastern countries, versus the adoption of USDC and other stable dollar-denominated stable coins. How do you see that demand for dollars going?
So right now, I think stable coins are very bullish for the US dollar. Why? And the actually ecosystem. So a lot of people look at stable coins as maybe a competition to the dollar. Actually, I think that they're allowing the dollar to do much better. You have people like USDT, Tether.
Incredible business model.
Really incredible, well over 100 billion US dollars that they have in issued tokens, and they don't put that money in the bank. They actually go and buy treasuries, right? So in many ways, they are, effectively lending to the US government, and there's a demand for USDT and USDC, etc. And so I think stable coins are contributing to the strength of the dollar. If you look at other stable coins, emerging market stable coins, they're really almost non-existent compared to US dollar stable. Even the euro stable
Even the euro,
coins
yeah.
are not
Or the
very-
yen.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't really hear about those, right?
Yeah.
There's more work that's being done in that space, but So then de-dollarization in general. If we look at the history of the world and the financial world, we've moved through different reserve currencies, and I do believe that in the future we will look back and there will be a money for the people of the world, not for a particular group of people of a particular nation state, which is kind of where we've been over the last several hundred years. But the nation state itself right now is under a lot of tension because, here we are in Singapore, none of us live over here. It doesn't matter who you are, what your nationality is. I don't ask that of you guys, you don't ask that of me, but
It's nice that you're South African, though.
Well, I'm not even South African.
What?
So there you go. I've got a US passport.
Oh, okay.
But I'm a permanent resident.
Where were
in
you
South Africa.
born?
I was born in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah.
and I grew up in Kenya.
Okay, my mind is still South African.
So all that to say that I think the world is morphing towards a system that doesn't look at money based on a nation state or a region, but that looks at money based on humanity. And I think that could be gold, but I don't think we're going to be going back to gold.
Yeah.
Or it could be something that's underpinned by cryptography that's basically on this beautiful network called the internet.
Sounds like you're talking about Bitcoin.
So it possibly could be Bitcoin. I think I have to have the humility not to admit that I don't know fully. I think right now Bitcoin has a very good chance of being a really strong reserve asset for the world. Is it going to be the ultimate asset? I don't know. But I do believe that the next reserve currency of the world will not be related to a nation state, but it will be for the world.
Yeah. In my mind, I see that being Bitcoin. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are at TOKEN2049,
Yep.
and there's so many projects, so many companies around. Has this excited you more about the industry? Are you happy with the quality of this projects you're seeing and the talks that you're having, or do you think it's a lot of fluff still and no real value being added?
So I haven't gone around to kind of evaluate all of them, and we've actually got a stand here and stuff. We were here last year, and now we're a big sponsor, so we were spending a lot of time at our stall with people coming to our lounge. There's a lot of glitz and a lot of kind of smoke and mirrors still, right? And if you go around and you look at it, it looks like everybody's doing so well, but the reality of the fact is that it's very difficult to run a business, and it's very difficult to run a business that's actually producing value for customers, that's generating income for yourselves to pay employees, etc. So most of what you see on the floor are not projects like that, right? But at the same time, there's no harm in that, and there's no shame in that, because that's where things begin. You start off things, you try it, you experiment, and then you see where it goes. But the people that are here this year are quite different to the people that were here last year, and they'll be different to some of the people that will be here next year. There will be certainly great successes and great failures that come out of many of the projects that are in these halls around us.
So one thing I've seen is that the projects that are already building and adding value, they're quieter in a sense. And a lot of the projects that make a lot of noise, they drown those smaller projects out that they can't be heard or can't be funded really or can't grow. What advice would you give to a smaller company that's actually doing something of value to kind of be heard in this noisy environment?
So first of all, build something that actually matters, right? Because ultimately the quality of the product will come through. That's the first thing. The second of all, the second thing I would say is be genuine. Just be yourself. Talk to as many people as you can. Get onto social media and all those things to tell the world about who you are. But do it in a genuine way. I think there's too much of, and then talk about the challenges that you might have. I think there's too much kind of glitz and glamour and not enough real kind of substance to what people are talking about. And I think that just goes for everything. My dad used to tell me, don't ever compare your insides with other people's outsides. Because if you look at the outside of what people are portraying, you know, their Instagram photos or Facebook, whatever, it's very different to what's going on internally. And I think there's a lot of power in showing people the truth, being vulnerable. And so I think to the extent that people can be themselves, have a real strong conviction in what they're doing, and share that conviction with the world, it's going to be their biggest chance of success.
I think being a genuine person is one of the biggest assets you can have nowadays. Looking forward in the next 6 months or so, in terms of narratives that are exciting you and that you think can actually add a lot of value, what specific, maybe just give like three narratives or industries.
In the crypto space or just beyond? In the crypto space? I think stablecoins will still keep growing. I think remittance corridors are going to keep growing with across the world and moving value across the world. I think we're going to see many more institutional players come in. We say that institutions are here because we've got ETFs and we've got Larry Fink talking about Bitcoin and BlackRock kind of dabbling in the space or playing in the space. But in South Africa, none of the institutions really are playing in any major way. They have teams, they're dabbling, they're playing, but they haven't entered.
Are they reaching out to you to kind of more?
Yeah.
I think it always starts from like one big player in the top, and then everyone starts dabbling, and then slowly it becomes in everyone's portfolio in some way.
Exactly. So I always say that I think the future is not about crypto and traditional finance. The future is about finance. We've had historical finance, we'll have future finance. And that finance will include the asset class that best serves the world, which I think will be crypto asset class. That's going to take some time to happen, but we're going to see some merging, we're going to see some consolidation. And ultimately, and I think it was in 1997 that Morgan Stanley publicly commented to say that we will not be so irresponsible as to expose our client data to this thing called the internet, right? That was in 1997. Now, there isn't any financial institution really that can be a part of our economy without being on the internet, right? And I think it's going to be the same thing with crypto assets. You're not going to be able to be in finance if you're not in crypto. Yeah. Finance and crypto, I think, will be one and the same. So I think that's the direction that we're moving in. That's our vision, what we're trying to build. So it's an exciting time to be alive.
I hope the journey there isn't too messy, but I'm very excited for it.
It will be messy. It will be messy. It has been messy. But you just need to make sure your values are straight. You follow your conviction.
Well, thanks so much, Farzam, for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for yours. Appreciate it.